Hi, welcome to Alberni Thrive. I'm Alicia LaRue.
And I'm Eric Plummer.
And today we will be discussing Cantimber.
I find it's a really exciting time to be part of Port Alberni. Lots of really neat things happening right now.
There's this critical period that Port Alberni is going through right now where it's trying to rediscover itself. And there's a lot of discussion about what works for Port Alberni, what's great about Port Alberni, what needs to be changed in Port Alberni.
Hi, welcome back to Alberni Thrive. Today we're talking about the Cantimber Biotech project. Now, when this initiative was announced to the public in the summer of 2015, it sounded like an ideal project for Port Alberni. It's an innovative, sustainable operation that uses wood that would otherwise be wasted on our woodlots surrounding the community. But since it started some operations this year, there's been concerns from the surrounding neighborhood in terms of air quality that initially and eventually resulted in halting operations and a third-party review of the safety of the process. Today we're very lucky to have some guests who can help to elevate the level of discussion about this project and hopefully help everyone become more informed about it. We're very lucky to be joined by Zoran Nezovic, President and CEO of the Port Alberni Port Authority, Michael Liu, Director of Project Development with Cantimber, and Port Alberni's Mayor Mike Ratin. Thanks very much for joining us, everyone.
Thank you.
So let's just back up here a little bit. Michael, could you describe the process that Cantimber undergoes with this operation?
Right. So Cantimber employs a process that converts logging residues into activated carbon. First of all, activated carbon that we produce are used for water purification, pharmaceutical product purification, food plant purification, and that requires a very clean product that's free of contaminants. Therefore, because that is the market that we target, our customer require us to be using a process that's chemical additive free.
So I understand that what we're talking about here is that wood that would otherwise be left and burned, I believe, on our surrounding wood lots with forestry operations is being collected and converted into chips, and it's put into a boiler and heated at a high temperature, I believe, and then it ends up coming out as like a activated carbon form, which is like charcoal, and this is used in the purification process you're talking about?
Mm-hmm. So you're correct. So we do collect logging residues that will be otherwise processed for open burning. Mm-hmm. We do convert them into a chip. There are two main stages in our process. The first one is converting wood chips into charcoal, and that's carbonization process. We use a technology called retort pyrolysis. In simple terms, it's actually just roasting the wood chips. So we expose it to temperature over 500 degrees Celsius in absence of oxygen. And in this process, it will char. And at the same time, during the process, the wood will release syngas that are recovered and to provide the heat energy required for this entire process itself. And therefore, we do not need to supplement with any fossil fuel, and this carbon, therefore, is carbon neutral.
So is this the first time that this process is actually being done?
No, this pyrolysis traced back into ancient Chinese history almost 5,000 years ago.
Okay. Because
our ancestors has used it actually from wood charcoal as a reducing agent to purify metal and make metal products.
Right. With an operation with what we have had here in Port Alberni, is this the first time in Canada that there is a similar operation as this?
Yeah, as far as based on the best of our knowledge, we are the first one to convert wood chips into activated carbon with this technology.
Why was Port Alberni selected? I understand that Cantimber had looked at locations across the province for this.
Yes, we have went through the province, all over the province, and also on the far east coast of Canada. I think what brought us here, first of all, is the natural resources that are available in the region. If you look on the map, this is one of the rare places where it's surrounded by the forest. 360 degrees.
Yeah.
I think the secondly is, I think actually it's the most important is the people who brought us here. I think we along the way we met Pat Deacon, who was very helpful and in help assist to identify some of the key criteria of site selection. He helped us solve a lot of those criteria. And we're very pleased that the Port Authority has offered their property, making it available forward, and Cantimber believed that was the right building and the situation to be located. At the same time, we are also working with the local supplier, who's at that time very supportive of our initiative, and he came on board, and that he was also a very critical component for us to make the decision, because now we have secure fiber.
So operations started early this year, I believe, at the local plant. What happened since then, and what went wrong?
So the construction of the plant completed in December 2015. We went through a serious commissioning. Commissioning involves safety checks, control checks, quality checks of every component of the plant. And then we did a trial production in April. What happened at that time was a cracked valve that had prevented the normal functioning of our wet scrubber, which is a device we use to treat particulate matters that goes into the atmosphere.
And this was in May, I believe?
This
when
was
the
in
cracked valve was
near the
discovered?
end of April.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
right.
And then we actually quickly replaced that valve with a local supplier in Vancouver. And then we did some upgrades. We also changed our operation procedure, because the checklist will have to be updated. And we conducted another run in June. What happened during June was that one of the things, the system was designed, we're not the first plant of using this technology. Prior technology, this technology has been used in Asia, for example in China and Malaysia.
Right.
They have a fairly different feedstock. So a lot of it is coconut shells or bamboos and typical activated carbon raw material found in other parts of the world.
Right.
But here, it's the first time the system used here in Port Alberni. And the unique thing about Port Alberni is, first of all, you have different tree species. And the other unique thing is the climate, because it rains a lot here. The raw material contains fairly high moisture content compared to what you see in the coconut shell or bamboo from that region of the world.
Right.
And therefore, we have a preheating process that was originally designed to just remove the moisture at temperature between 120 degrees Celsius. However, because the moisture is so high, and at the same time the process we designed is through a heat exchange to heat it, maybe there is perhaps a region of that during the preheating is exposed to higher temperature than 120 degrees. And so that between 150 and 250 degrees Celsius, that's when actually the VOC likes to generate. Because any temperature lower, it won't be coming out. Any higher, it will be destroyed.
So I think that before we go any further, we need to touch on concerns that have come from the community after this operation started.
Yeah. Well, initially, it was brought to the community as even zero emissions.
But we've been
So,
hearing of reports of
there is
nosebleeds, headaches, people with breathing problems in the surrounding area. Mike, I know that you observed the plant. What did you find when you went by there earlier this year?
Well, when I was aware of the smoke in the neighborhood, I went through a number of times, and yeah, the smoke impacted me, and it was a concern, because from the city's perspective, we believe this to be the right project in this location at this time with our available resource, but we want to make sure that the technology is right for us. Our perspective, though, is that we need to participate in the review and making sure that the review occurred, make sure that all the science is behind it. But basically, it's an engineering problem. An engineering problem will address and find a solution. And we believe that we're going to get there. Right. We believe that the technology is right for us at this time, and it's something that's going to be good, because, for us as a city, we need to make sure that we diversify our economy as much as possible in order to withstand all of the other pressures that are going to happen and be focused on our little area. And this is part of that.
I'm just curious about the location though. How was that decided? Because the thing is it's so close to residents. How is that factored in? Zoran?
So as far as we know, of course, it was favorable for, as Michael mentioned, for a number of reasons, because of the availability of wood nearby. But also we had a warehouse that was ready and was empty to be used. And it was easy to convert that warehouse, which would help Cantimber set up the operation that much easier. So that's why the location was chosen.
What is the Port Authority's role in all of this, and when did the Port Authority decide that it was time to step in and to get the third-party safety review going?
So we are a landlord and also a regulatory authority for projects of this kind. And maybe just to back up a little bit, I think Michael didn't mention that the operations, or at least commissioning process, started in November of last year. Mm-hmm. So they were operating in November and December, testing the equipment, mm-hmm. and throughout. And the first incident happened end of April when we had a cracked valve at that time. It was a technical issue technical problem that Cantimber resolved fairly quickly. However, later on in May, there was more concerns and more issues. And at one point, mid-June, there was also concerns from the neighboring residents that there is potentially some chemicals being used in the operations of that facility. And at that point, there was enough, I would say, concern from public in order for us to ask Cantimber to suspend the operation.
That was the driving factor, I believe, for suspending the operation and ordering this third-party review of the safety.
That's exactly
What has been done since?
So at least,
Or
sorry.
Either of you want to answer? That's
So
fine.
I'll answer it
Okay.
on our end, and maybe Michael can.
Perfect.
And
Yeah.
Michael will probably have to complete the technical components. So we have asked the Cantimber to suspend the operation. Main reason, and I did indicate that at the open house, his main reason was that there was a suspicion of chemicals being used. After we investigated that, we were convinced that there is no chemicals in the operations whatsoever. However, we decided to invite third-party consulting company or third-party environmental consulting company to review the Cantimber operation and provide non-biased third-party review of that. And we have included a number of other stakeholders in the community in asking what we should do and how we should proceed forward. So we have shared that with local First Nations. We have shared with Vancouver Island Health Authority, with First Nation Health Authority, with BCMOE, British Columbia Ministry of Environment. We shared our plans and have coordinated all our actions with the broad group, and essentially doing an environmental assessment of a kind before we proceed forward.
Okay, yeah. Well, definitely great that you guys are going at that to take the concerns of the citizens quite serious. With that at hand, we're going to cut to break, and so we'll be right back. Hi, welcome back to Alberni Thrive. Today we're discussing Cantimber. Before we went to break, we were commenting on what both the Port Authority and the city have they suspended operations of Cantimber. Now, I asked the question before, what has happened since? So I'd like to ask you, Michael, what has Cantimber done since June, since the closing?
Right. So in June, when the incident happened, Cantimber actually also volunteered to agree, and I think the timing was roughly around the same time, even before that we decided to cut the operation because the emission was not what it was supposed to design to do. So immediate afterward, we had to gather a team of our engineering experts, professor we have a collaboration with. working within the research and scientific basis with our operators. We have reviewed the process during the trial commission, and we identified the sources of the smell and odor that our neighbor has been experienced. And the other thing, we went back also, we do have a particulate matter PM 2.5 monitor that's set up 2 blocks uphill near Bruce and 2nd Avenue at our residence. We reviewed those data, and those data during the commissioning runs actually did not indicate that we have surpassed, but and so the main concern is the smell. What Cantimber did afterward was that we identified one of the major source of that smell is from the preheating area. So as I mentioned earlier in this show, is that when the temperature in the preheating zone is between 150 to 250 degrees Celsius, that's when the volatile organic compounds, typically referred as VOCs, start to be coming out of the wood. And these are the contents that the neighbor has been smelling. But what we like to emphasize is that because we don't add chemicals, these VOCs would be also have similar chemical composition as what people would experience in their home wood stove or campfire, and that kind of similar chemical content. So what Cantimber did, now identifying the source, is that we have actually, in the past 3 months, we have invested we have taken on a advice from our engineering team that there are other activated carbon plants in the world that have used a device called secondary combustion chamber to treat the VOC emissions.
This is something that would be added on to the existing facility?
That's right.
That was added on.
That's being added on. It's
Right.
being installed as we speak at this
Okay.
very moment.
So, I mean, a question that a lot of people out there are going to have is that why wasn't this put in the first place?
Because when the equipment was designed, it was designed based on a different type of raw material. To our surprise, the Alberni Valley fiber material has very high moisture content.
Right.
Therefore, there were equipment that need to be modified to accommodate for the raw material we have here.
So an awful lot of influence, I think, rests with the third-party review here. What is next with that, and what can we expect in the future?
So the plan right now is to allow Cantimber to introduce all the improvements that they're planning to do. And besides secondary burning chamber, I believe Cantimber is introducing some other improvements to the operations. And secondary burning chamber or thermal oxidizer, is that correct, Michael?
That's right.
Thermal oxidizer is something that most of the residents have been, actually not most, but some of the residents and some of the people that they complain have been looking for, because it is a main source of the problems that we have experienced. So we'll allow Cantimber to install the improvements, and then once they're ready, we are going to proceed to test the facility.
And now you guys have the set dates, right?
So right now it's November 1st, and we are all gearing and going forward with that date in mind. The date it's not necessarily written in stone, so it could potentially be moved, and probably at that point will be moved maybe towards later of the year or beginning of the new year in January, to allow essentially for us to do, for Cantimber to do all the improvements. How the testing will be done, it will be done by the Golden Associates. Essentially, it will be an independent third party that they'll be hiring another subcontractor to do all the testing, and the testing will take place 4 days. That'll take 2-3 days for Cantimber to warm up, 4 days for testing, 2-3 days for shutdown of the operation. We'll also have a broader window of 3 days ambient monitoring before and 3 days after, and ambient monitoring throughout. So a lot of parties have been involved with that, as I mentioned earlier, and we run this by the British Columbia Ministry of Environment, and we run this by the Vancouver Island Health Authority, and they're both in agreement with our plan process as we see how to proceed forward.
So this touches on the big question at this point, which I know I'm going to hear from my neighbors who were experiencing breathing problems earlier this year. What can the city and Cantimber and the Port Authority do right now to reassure residents that their air is going to be safe and their environment is going to be safe. I mean, something was brought up at the session the other night about growing vegetables in this neighborhood. How can you reassure people at this point if this project goes forward?
It's part of the process, and it's part of the monitoring. As I said, we see this as an engineering problem that's going to be addressed through bright-minded engineers, but we also see this as part of this community's economic future. Once the process has been proven, once the product is being sold, we have full confidence that, assuming we get through the environmental concerns, this will be a company that will expand. This will be opportunities for us locally that will expand. This is employment locally. This will be a product from this local area. And people will get to point to Port Alberni and say, gee, you know what they're doing? They're into the next generation use of their wood product. And that resource is now being used to help communities in other places in the world. Also, by using that resource, they're also cleaning up their own environment. Because we know from our past experience, every fall, that's the time when people have breathing problems because the forest companies set the piles of wood on fire. Mm-hmm. We don't want to see that happen. We keep pushing the forest companies to do other things with that fiber. Don't burn it. Don't add that into our airshed. Use that resource. Don't waste it. Cantimber is part of addressing that issue of not wasting that resource.
So, assuming this does go forward, because I know that there has been a considerable investment in this operation, what can people look to as they see smoke coming out of that smokestack to be reassured that their air is safe and there isn't going to be health effects from that? Is there going to be regular monitoring that will be available to the public? Is there going to be, what measures will be in place to reassure people?
So maybe just to add, we are going to increase the monitoring number of stations in the area during the testing. The testing is going to show us exactly what comes out of the facility. We believe, as Mr. Mayor said, that technology is going to solve these problems, and especially secondary burning chamber and other improvements that Cantimber is planning to do with their operation. Mm-hmm. I don't think we'll have any concerns in the future. However, I just wanted to add to it, and you mentioned about growing vegetables and other concerns that people may have. This is mainly a problem with, and Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, with VOCs. With an essentially unburned or smoldering wood emissions that come out, and that may irritate people's respiratory system and or nasal passages. This has nothing or no impact on the soil in any way. Essentially, what we are doing, we are just burning wood. Mm-hmm. There's no chemicals involved, and it's not going to be. I'm not going to spray some kind of chemicals so people cannot grow stuff around. Mm-hmm. And actually, some of the product that Cantimber is having is going to be used as a fertilizer with a local farmer. That's how valuable that is. And I wanted to add one more thing just before. We're talking about what Cantimber and why we were really engaged along with the city to bring Cantimber here is not, it's economic, the benefits and diversity and so on and so forth. But what I saw as the most benefit of ours for the community is they will reduce a slash burning of the wood in the bush. Just to give you an idea, and I did ask our supplier what that equates to. And tells me this guy's Cantimber is going to use about 55 to 60,000 cubic meters of the wood chips from the wood. And I asked him, so how much is approximately one slash burn pile? What that equates to? He says between 50 and 60 cubic meters. And the one slash burn pile is probably the size of this house as you have it here. Mm-hmm. So these guys, Cantimber is going to reduce 1,000 of slash burn piles being burned in the forest being burned 5-10 kilometers away from Port Alberni. That's exactly what these guys are going to reduce in totally controlled environment.
So now you're working with the forestry industry, with them bringing you, like, how's that work to even get you the wood? Is it through the forestry company or is it the Cantimber?
So we're working with a local company named Beeberry. So Mr. Brad Berry is the chief operator of the company. One of the things that we have mentioned to him is that first of all, we want to avoid any halogens in the feedstock. So therefore, typically when you're exposed to a heavy sea salt content, if it went through the water, you generate dioxin, which is environmental pollutant. So what's unique is that we address that from the supply chain. The woods are actually being chipped in the forest site, blown directly into the bin truck, and the bin truck will bring that directly to the yard, our yard. So during this logistic transportation, in nowhere there is in contact with any salt water.
So in just as a parting comment, we have a project here that has a great deal of potential and benefits to the community, but there's been considerable problems so far. Things didn't really go according to plan. What have we learned so far that we can take forward into the future for those concerns to not continue?
And make it, we're already at basically half an hour, so just a quick one. Just to set that. Where do we see the future? What have we learned? Zoran, we'll go.
We have learned that I think we should have involved public more, public feedback more throughout the process, and get their feedback. And especially after we started the operation, or after Cantimber started the operation, we should have actively solicited feedback from the community. And I think, as with any project, I think the communication was or should have been better, at least.
Yeah, so we learned about the raw material in Alberni, how they affect and how they complement or non-complement with the technology we have. We constantly have a review with our engineering team to have our system better adaptable to the raw materials we have, and also better adaptable and ensure that the environmental concerns are being addressed from the technical engineering front.
Okay, great, Mike.
And we need to make sure that people understand the potential for this and the potential for the future of this community.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for being guests. Yeah, definitely check out our website, www.albernithrive.com. And yeah.
See you later.